She asked, "Can you take us to town?" He didn't know their request would change his life forever. The wind rolled softly across the open prairie, carrying with it the smell of dust, hay, and the fading warmth of a sun that had begun its slow descent behind the jagged western hills, and as old rancher Cole Maddox tightened the reins of his horse and guided it toward the weathered fence line, he noticed two small figures standing at the end of the dirt road, two girls, no older than 6 or 7, clinging to each other with the kind of quiet fear only children abandoned by certainty could carry, and though Cole had seen storms, droughts, and winters that broke stronger men, nothing struck him harder than the sight of those trembling little faces watching him with hope and hesitation as if he were the last safe thing in their world. When he rode closer, the older girl lifted her chin with a bravery that didn't suit her young age and asked in a soft voice, Can you take us to town, sir?" And Cole slid off his horse slowly, his boots pressing into the earth as he crouched to meet their eyes and asked gently, "Where's your folks, sweetheart?" But the younger girl only buried her face into her sister's dress while the older one whispered, "Mama's sick. Real sick. She told us to get help. But we're scared, and she can't walk anymore." Cole felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, not worry, but that old ache he thought had died years ago the day he lost his own daughter, Lily, a bright blue-eyed child who used to run through these same fields before fate took her away in a winter storm he never forgave himself for. That pain had turned him into a solitary man, a man who avoided children not because he disliked them but because every small face reminded him of what he couldn't save. Yet looking at these two girls, he didn't see ghosts of the past. He saw a responsibility he couldn't turn away from. He placed a reassuring hand on the older girl's shoulder and said carefully, "I'll take you to town, but only if you promise to come back home after. Your mama'll be worried if you disappear." The girl's eyes filled with tears, not just from fear but from relief at finally being heard by someone bigger, stronger, capable, and she nodded quickly, almost desperately, gripping her sister's hand tighter as if to anchor herself to the promise she was making. Cole lifted the little one onto his horse first, then the older girl, making sure they felt secure before climbing up behind them, and as the horse began its slow trot toward the ranch house, the girls leaned against him with trust that pierced straight through his long frozen heart. When they arrived at the ranch, Cole brought them inside, offering water, bread, and a blanket while he saddled his truck to drive their mother to the hospital, and in those minutes he found himself observing them. How the older girl kept trying to be strong for her sister, how the younger kept glancing toward the door as if afraid their mother might vanish if they were gone too long. Something inside Cole began to melt, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to touch in years, a protective warmth, a desire to guard them, to see them smile, to make sure they never felt alone on a cold road again. When they finally drove to their small, broken-down cabin at the edge of the canyon, he found their mother lying weakly on the floor, pale and shivering, whispering apologies to her daughters for not being strong enough, and as Cole carried her to his truck, her tired eyes met his with a mixture of gratitude and defeat. "Thank you," she whispered, coughing, "I didn't know if anyone would come." Cole shook his head and answered quietly, "Your girls were brave. You raised em right." At the hospital, the doctors rushed her inside, and the two little girls clung to Cole's shirt, refusing to let go, their small hands gripping the fabric as if he were their last anchor to safety. As the night deepened, Cole sat with them in the waiting area, letting them fall asleep against his arms, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel the rancher's silence waiting for him. He felt something alive, something hopeful, something he thought he had lost forever. When the doctor emerged hours later with exhausted eyes but a small smile, Cole felt the girls wake up and hold their breath. "She's stable," the doctor said. "She'll need care, but she's going to make it." The girls burst into relieved sobs, and Cole wrapped his arms around them, feeling something reopen inside him, something raw, something human, something healing. And what he didn't know then was that this night, this promise, and these two little strangers would change everything about the lonely rancher who had sworn never to let his heart feel again. Cole brought the girls back to the ranch for the night because the hospital insisted their mother would be unconscious for several hours, and though he tried to tell himself it was only temporary, the way they clung to him, the way the tired eyes softened when he carried them inside his warm kitchen, made him realize this wasn't some passing act of kindness. This was something deeper, something that had been waiting inside him to be awakened again after years of silence. He wrapped them in quilts, made them warm soup, and watched them giggle softly at his old ranch dog, Buck, who nudged their hands for attention as if he sensed they needed comfort more than anyone else in the room. That night, as Cole sat by the fire while they slept on the couch, he found himself staring at the flames with a heaviness he hadn't felt in a long time, remembering how he used to hold his daughter exactly like this whenever storms frightened her, remembering how she would fall asleep against his chest with absolute trust, and how he had let fear of losing someone again seal away that part of himself for so many years. By morning, the girls woke him with shy smiles and messy hair, and when he offered to take them to the hospital, they asked timidly, "Will you stay with us? Mama will feel safer with you there." And though Cole had spent years avoiding attachments, avoiding entanglements, avoiding anything that reminded him of what he had once lost, the truth came to him so suddenly and so clearly that he didn't hesitate. "I'll stay," he said simply, and the older girl, Emily, hugged him so tightly it stole his breath. At the hospital, their mother, Clara, woke with a pained but grateful smile, her voice weak as she whispered, "You came back home like you promised." And the girls nodded, telling her how the rancher had saved them, fed them, and made them feel safe. Clara's eyes drifted to Cole, softening with gratitude and something unspoken, fear, relief, humility, before she whispered, "I owe you more than I can ever repay." Cole shook his head firmly. "You don't owe me a thing. Just get better." But as days passed and Clara's recovery required weeks of monitoring, Cole found himself stepping into their lives more and more, not out of obligation, but out of a pull he couldn't deny. He repaired the broken porch, fixed the roof, stocked their pantry, took the girls riding on gentle horses, and taught them how to feed calves in the early morning light. They brought laughter back to the ranch, filling the empty barn with the echo of childish joy he hadn't heard in years, and each night when they hugged him goodbye, he felt that same warmth spread through his chest, a warmth he had convinced himself he didn't deserve anymore. One evening, after bringing the girls home from the ranch, Clara, still pale but growing stronger, sat on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders and said quietly, "You've been alone a long time, haven't you?" Cole hesitated, staring at the sunset before nodding. "Longer than I should have been." Clara looked at her daughters chasing Buck around the yard, then back at Cole with a softness that made him look away. "You gave them something I couldn't," she whispered. "You gave them safety, hope." Cole swallowed hard. "They gave me something too." "What's that?" "A reason to feel again." Her eyes shimmered, but she said nothing more. Weeks later, when Clara was healthy enough to return home fully, the girls cried when Cole brought them back to town, clutching his hands as if they feared this was the end, but he knelt down, brushing their hair gently aside, and used the same words he had said the first day they met. "I'll take you to town, but only if you promise to come back home." This time, both girls threw their arms around his neck and shouted, "We promise." And they kept that promise. Every weekend they returned to the ranch, bringing laughter, warmth, and life to a place that had forgotten what family felt like. Clara visited often too, always with a shy smile and gratitude that grew into something deeper, something fragile and real. And slowly, gently, the cracks in all their hearts began to heal, not through grand gestures, but through everyday moments of care, trust, and shared hope. In the years to come, the ranch that once echoed with grief became a home again, a home where 3 new voices laughed under the open sky, where Clara's smile became a familiar warmth in Cole's kitchen, and where a lonely rancher discovered that sometimes love doesn't return in the way you expect, but in the form of a promise kept by 2 brave little girls standing on a dusty road asking for help. And to everyone watching this story, if it touched your heart, inspired you, or made you feel something real, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more emotional, powerful stories like this one to life.